So thank you for joining us. This is about how to conduct a materiality assessment. So I'm sure most of you know me. I'm Jessie Servio-Ortiz, the Managing Director of the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council. And our mission is to advance sustainable principles and practices forward through the power of business. We do this through education, through helping businesses measure and improve their sustainability outcomes, and helping connect sustainability professionals and business leaders to each other. So we also have several programs. Most of you might be familiar with us, but those who are not, we've recently become a member organization. So that's very exciting. You can now join WSBC as a member. We have our Green Masters program, which is a benchmarking and assessment tool for businesses to see where they're at with sustainability and to get ideas about what they could be doing to improve in their businesses. We also have a gamification platform called Cool Choices. We have a program called 21st Century Pathways that is really geared towards businesses serious about taking sustainability to the next level. We also have practitioners that can support you in your water stewardship goals through the Alliance for Water Stewardship. And we have people on staff that can help with the Sustainability Consortium, that's TSC as well. So since our membership model is new, I did just want to invite you, if you aren't currently a member, to consider joining our membership. You can join your business as a member, you can join as an individual, or affiliate organizations can join as well. And this is really the best way to take advantage of our core competencies as an organization, to connect with other leaders, to get education you or those inside your business might need to drive sustainability goals inside your organization. It's an opportunity to speak and co-host or co-organize events. And really we're helping equip you with tools and to develop skills so that you can enhance and improve your sustainability program or goals or credentials inside your organization. So I invite you to join us in membership. So today, again, we're talking about materiality. I'd like to welcome Laura Laux from Inpro and Nicole Burney from ABB with us. Laura is, just gonna look at her bio here. So Laura is a sustainability specialist at Inpro, where she works on corporate efficiency, product transparency, and employee engagement around sustainability. She went to Northland College and holds a degree in sustainable community development and is working on her master's at the University of Wisconsin in sustainable management. Laura is also on the board of Waukesha County Green Team, where she co-hosts their podcast, Greencast. So welcome, Laura. And Nicole is the Health, Safety, and Environmental Manager for ABB. So she's worked in this field for over 17 years, and she helps ABB accomplish their mission by making the world turn while saving energy every day. So Nicole's really been instrumental in helping drive change in the HSE field, health, safety, and environment at ABB by driving continuous improvement, by establishing a culture around HSE, and developing management systems. She's also oversees the environmental function of HSE, and this role has expanded sort of from the traditional environmental compliance to overall environmental sustainability and corporate responsibility. At ABB, Nicole engages stakeholders to develop further sustainability objectives, and previously also was in facilities management there. Nicole graduated from Clarkston University with a degree in industrial hygiene and is a certified safety professional. And she also is a member of ABB's Encompass Women, as well as ASSP's Women in Safety Engineering. So welcome to Nicole as well. So today what we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk at a really high level of what is materiality. Just kind of dive into a definition about that and sort of set the stage for the conversation. And then we're going to talk we're going to hear from Inpro and their case study about conducting a materiality assessment. And then we will hear ABB's case study about the same thing. And then we'll end with a discussion. So at any point, if you have a question along the way, we invite you to type your questions in the chat. I will take a pause when we transition from Laura to Nicole to answer any questions you might have specifically to Laura's case study. And we'll also kind of have a discussion at the end for any insights or additional questions that you might have. Okay, what is materiality? So a definition of materiality is determining the importance or significance of something relevant to your business based upon stakeholder and company interests in the areas of risk, opportunities, actions, and or shared information to make informed decisions. So what a materiality assessment does is it really helps focus and prioritize actions and goals for an organization. And why? Why does materiality matter to companies? It really helps inform their reporting process as well as inform their business strategy. So, and then of course the business strategy helps to inform your reporting process. So what we're seeing here is that business strategy, so materiality analysis leads to a more balanced perception of the company's critical issues, which leads to a more focused report. And robust materiality analysis informs the balance between detail and breadth of coverage in reporting. So companies really focus on material issues because they pose significant opportunity to build value within an organization. So success in addressing material issues can create significant value for brand and financial interest holders, as well as pose significant risk to reputation and profitability for an organization. So failure to address material issues can increase costs, decrease sales, erode brand value, and cause a loss of talent. So that's sort of a high level on why materiality matters to an organization. And really this process is about having conversations and deepening the understanding of what's important, both to the key stakeholders and to the overall organization. And it really helps companies to prioritize and enhance their strategies, to really identify what the highest areas of risk and opportunity are, and really helps with resource allocation for having the greatest potential impact on the organization. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Laura to share her story. And give me 1 second, Laura, to give you mouse control here. There you go. You should have that, and feel free to take it away. Okay, Laura, I think you're on mute. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, my control to unmute went away when you gave me control of the slide. Okay.
Great, we can hear you.
Can I go back a slide here now? There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura. Yeah, I'm the sustainability specialist here at Inpro. So Inpro, we did our first materiality assessment. We started it in 2019 and we ended in 2020. It was kind of a lengthy process for us. And I want to share some things that we did and how we did it. So that wasn't supposed to change. So I wanted to point out that we are a relatively small organization. We only have about 600 employees. So our process was a lot different than ABB, and so you'll get two very different perspectives on how to complete this. And so, you know, take whichever one you feel fits your company best. So this is the process that we went through to create our materiality. We started with figuring out the why, creating a steering team, choosing indicators, actually conducting the assessment, and then figuring out the matrix on the end of it. So I've got a slide for explaining each of these. Oh, I didn't do that. So we decided to do this. We are a private company, so we don't have any reporting requirements, but we wanted to internally have a better structure and understanding of our own sustainability report. And so that's kind of why we decided to go through with this, and also to have a better understanding of our current strategy, like Jesse was mentioning, and understand what our stakeholders wanted instead of just having a stab in the dark of, you know, assuming that we know what our stakeholders wanted. We wanted to make sure we actually have the data to back that up. And who was involved in the team? So it was myself. I sit in the product development team. So my boss is the VP of product development. So he was on the team. Our senior VP of product development was included as well. Our VP of marketing was included, as well as somebody else on the marketing team who was really good at surveys. So we were kind of the core steering team leading this, and we kind of chose the team based on who was already involved in sustainability, and of course having the marketing people involved and survey people involved really helped us create the survey aspect of this. So the first step was choosing the indicators, and how we decided to go about this was having specific indicators and asking people to rank them. You'll hear a different side of this when Nicole talks, but this is how we decided to do it for our first round. And so we chose some indicators that we were going to work with. This matrix is showing, when I started the process, I wanted to figure out, you know, what kinds of things should we be looking at. And so I looked at a couple of different reporting mechanisms that are already out there and trying to see which ones would overlap. So I started with the GRI and listed out what indicators they ask for in their reporting. And then I cross-referenced that to the Sustainable Development Goals, SASB, Green Masters, Global Compact, and LEED, because we are a manufacturer that deals with architectural products. We wanted to make sure that we are also crossing over into the LEED things and what they are asking for us. And I'll also note here that the two that we found on Green Masters that weren't mentioned in GRI and a couple of other ones were the product design and lifecycle management and outside partnerships. So we did decide to add those two to the indicator list that I found from GRI because the Green Masters is something we participated in. We wanted to make sure that we are addressing everything that our stakeholders are interested in. We didn't use this full list. We started with this list, and then within our steering committee, we ended up taking off 10 that just didn't apply to Inpro at all because we didn't want the survey to be too overwhelming. So we ended up with a list of 26 instead of 36, which might have been a little bit too much. So we kind of did an initial culling with the steering committee, and then we put that into SurveyMonkey. We used SurveyMonkey as our medium for asking our stakeholders what was important. So each of the indicators was put into a sentence, as you can see, and there's a couple of descriptions behind the sentence in order to make sure that everybody understood what they were being asked. And so the meat of this assessment was the SurveyMonkey and asking people to drag and drop and rank all 26 to what they felt was most important to Inpro. And there were a couple of different, ways how to do this. And I know other companies are able to maybe divide these out so people aren't looking at all 26 at once. Some companies choose to do just the environmental ones, just the social ones, and then just the government ones, and then you can rank those individually. But because Inpro is relatively small compared to the companies I heard who were doing that, and also because it was our first time, we decided to use this master list in order to make the back analysis more straightforward on our end. We couldn't figure out a way to weight each of the 3 sections according to each other in order to put that all back together. So I'll touch on this at the end, but this was definitely one of the problems that we encountered was ranking a list of 26 indicators, especially for sustainability employees, is very, very difficult. Everybody thinks that everything is important and everybody wants everything to be number 1. And so going through the process for 26 was really daunting. And that's something that we're going to be focusing on next time is how to make this easier for people, because it was a lot of work. So after we sent out the Survey Monkeys, we ended up creating 3 different links. It was the same initial assessment, but there were a couple other like demographic questions that were changed. We sent out 3 different links to our suppliers, our employees, and our customers. And so we were able to collect those responses individually, which was really interesting on the back end to be able to see where things were falling. And so after we received responses from all of these 3 groups, I imported all of the data from SurveyMonkey into Excel, and I averaged the response from each group. So this is the results of our average of just our employees and what they thought was most important. And then I had that data for also our customers and suppliers. And so with our steering committee, we were able to look at each 3 results here and see, you know, what was different, did they make sense? How were they the same? And honestly, they were mostly the same. I think there were only 2 or 3 of the indicators that were flip-flopped or moved around, but it was pretty equal. And then we had a big discussion about how to compile everything together. And what we ended up doing is weighting them separately. We didn't weight all 3 of our stakeholders equally in this first round. We decided to weight our employees at 60%, our suppliers at 20%, and our customers at 20%, simply because we got the most response from our employees, first of all, and second of all, that's just how we wanted to focus our efforts right now, is kind of to focus a little bit more on what employees want. If we're able to get more responses from our customers, we'll probably equal out those weightings a little bit, but we had pretty poor responses from our customers. We had better responses from the suppliers, but we wanted to make sure that our employees were focused on. So we weighted each response column, and then we averaged those weights together. And so after weighting and averaging, that became our y-axis for the materiality assessment. So now you've got your y-axis, and now we had to go through how to create the x-axis. And we did this this one was relatively easier, because this one, the x-axis has to do with what's important to Inpro and what we can actually impact and influence. And so we just went through individually, and I sat down with this list and I thought about it in terms of what we're already doing at Inpro, what we could be doing, low-hanging fruit, things like that. And I ranged them according to what we could impact and influence the most. So this one is sorted by that. So you can see I put waste at the top because that was kind of a goal already for us. We're always looking at energy, water, and materials. So those are next and on down the line. And so I kind of did that initial ranking as a draft and brought that to the steering committee, and they seemed pretty okay with that. I think we moved a couple of things around, but it was based on what we're already doing and the goals that we already have going on. So after that, that was a pretty simple task internally, and now you've got your x-axis. And so after that, you're able to put it all together and just see where things fall. And so you've got your X and Y, and we just graphed it out in Excel first and looked at it. After we were able to put this all together, we brought it back to the steering committee. And your last step is validation and just making sure that everything looks correct, everything makes sense to the committee and to the company. And so after we looked at this, there were actually a couple of things after this point that we also moved around. There were a couple of things in the watch category that we wanted to move up into the measure category. And so we moved a couple of things to make sure that it was exactly, reflected what we wanted to be focusing on. And the watch, measure, and act categories, those were kind of designated as natural breaks in the data. There's no real scientific way that we moved those apart. It was just kind of natural breaks that we found. And so the act in the top right are the things that Inpro is going to be watching and actually working on and including in goals and strategies for the next couple of years. The measure category are things that we're going to be looking at and measuring, mostly in accordance with our ISO certification and other things that we already do, but they aren't necessarily going to be incorporated into goals. And then the watch category are things that didn't really fall into our actions, but we will keep watch on them for coming years. I will say before we move on that the final graph wasn't super surprising to us. It was kind of nice to see that everything that was important to Inpro ended up being important to our stakeholders as well. And so the materials, water, energy, and waste, all those green dots up there, we're really focused on that. We've got, an EMS team with our ISO certification. And so we're focusing on that. We have goals along that line every year. We're super focused on employee education, lots of internal education programs at Inpro. So that is already something that we're focusing on. And so it's really nice to be able to validate that and see what we're already doing well. So next, there we go. So how are we using the data? Right now, we are working on trying to be able to use the data in more ways. So after we figured out what it looked like in that matrix, I mapped out the top ACT indicators and I mapped them back to the sustainability development goals that they were coordinated with. So that's what this little chart is, all the SDGs that they're coordinated with. And so those SDGs are the framework of our 2021 sustainability report. And so I just finished that draft of our sustainability report, and it was really nice to have a more concise and targeted approach to that report, because in the past, we really didn't have any framework that we were necessarily reporting on. It was what we thought was important, but we didn't know that for sure. We wanted to make sure. And so it was really nice to kind of have this to tailor the report a little bit more and make sure that we're hitting everything that's important to our stakeholders. In the future, we're hoping to include the information a little bit more in maybe our EMS team goals and strategies, but we have not done that for this year. Perhaps for 2022, we'll be able to incorporate these things into our goals and targets. But like I said, the top 4 we do already. We already have goals for that. So I guess that kind of counts as well. And so finally, I don't know if I can, there we go. So finally, what would I do differently? I would like to include interviews in this process. It was purely a survey format for us for this first time, and you'll hear from Nicole a different way to do this, but I would like to include a lot more interviews and have a lot more person-to-person data to get a little bit more interest, and perhaps we would get some more responses from that as well. I'd also like to involve more leaders at Inpro. We had a really great steering committee, but sustainability is a group effort. And so including more people in that process would be really important and helpful for us. I also want to take a better look at the indicators and customize them a little bit more. For this first time, I really did just look at the GRI and some of the other things and plucked out like the wording and everything from those indicators. And it would be nice to kind of customize that a little bit more to Inpro and our specific industry and the building sector as well. So that's something that I want to do. Like I mentioned before, the SurveyMonkey format that we used was really difficult, and I understand that, and I would like to make it easier to fill that out instead of just dragging and dropping 26 indicators, because that was a lot of work for everybody, and I'm sure that's why we had a low response rate, especially on the customer side. And on the front end, I think it would be really useful to kind of have a starting webinar for this and explain the process on the front end so that suppliers and customers aren't just getting this email and asked to fill out this survey. They don't know what it is. They don't know why we're doing it and why it's important to us. And so when we do this again, probably in 2022, I'm going to schedule a webinar to explain the process and answer any questions right off the bat. So I think that's all I have. So yeah, there you go. Jesse, do we have any questions?
I apologize to you. I think I moved your slides a few times as I'm trying to get the controls better here. So I didn't see any questions come in. I had a question. If anybody does have a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask. The question that came up for me though, Laura, was how did you choose your steering committee? How did you form that? Like, how did you decide who was going to be a part of the decision making on this?
Yeah, so it was mostly people who were already involved in sustainability at the company. Like I said, myself and my boss and the senior VP are already involved in sustainability initiatives. And so they understood where we were coming from and what we needed, what kind of data we needed. And then the other two individuals were from the marketing team. So making sure that we are addressing marketing needs, and the second individual was really involved in the survey making, and has done a lot of surveys in the past. And so having that expertise really helped me. We had a lot of brainstorming sessions with the two of us, figuring out if SurveyMonkey was the best tool and how to make it better. So that's kind of how we did it. In our next round, we're including our EMS manager as well for the ISO certification, because she is very involved in all of our environmental indicators. So we're including her. So we're going to explain the team a little bit in the future.
Great. This is really great information, Laura. Thank you so much for walking us through your process. There's something that came in the chat here. So Roxanne, oh, go ahead.
I'll just ask. Thanks. Thank you, Laura, for the presentation. I'm just curious on the back end of Jesse's question. Is there anybody who you would like to see be a part of that council who maybe isn't already?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I think the EMS manager is going to be a really good resource for us because she does our ISO certification. I think if you're just getting started with this though, I think having allies and having people who understand sustainability is a lot more important than having the diversity that you might need in a more polished process, just to be able to brainstorm and understand like what you actually need out of the process. I think our team was pretty well rounded. In the future, it would be nice to have one representative from more departments for sure. Perhaps like sales would be a really good one, because maybe that would increase our customer engagement. VP of supply chain would also be a really good one to include to increase our suppliers engagement. But I think we had a really good starting team. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah.
And Laura, just one last thought. You also, in your list of things you would improve on, mentioned involve more leadership. And I'm just wondering, you know, in a perfect world for you, what does that look like at Inpro in terms of engagement from your senior leadership?
Yes, in a perfect world, I think they don't need to be necessarily on the steering committee doing all of the work, but it would be really wonderful to at least be conducting interviews with them as part of the stakeholder groups. I think one of my goals for our next round is to include a couple of interviews for senior leadership to make sure that I understand what they need out of Inpro and what they think the priorities are. And then also kind of running things by them on the back end as we approve them, to make sure that they're involved in all of the process and able to submit, you know, questions or comments or maybe suggestions on how we could be doing it better throughout the process. So not directly involved in the steering committee, but definitely have their voices more involved in the entire process versus just seeing the matrix.
So one follow-up to that then, once they saw the matrix, what was their response?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. It was really good. So I had some pushback at the beginning of, it was mostly people just not understanding what the point was, because we are a private company, so there is no real reason to be doing external reporting. And so there was a lot of confusion on why would we be doing this? What does it mean? This is a really long process and it's kind of weird. So what's the point? But once I put together the first draft of that actual matrix, the 4x4 with all the dots and the color codes, it changed everything. Everybody was so impressed with it. They love seeing the visual and they love understanding what's important to our stakeholders and having that data visually represented versus just like, a couple of emails or even just data. Like having the visual is so important. And so I think it was really important to just push through and just keep saying this is important until we could show them what the result was, and then they understand why.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, invaluable information. And that mapping it process is arduous, but like you said, just that concise version of what all that data is and what it shows is so informative for their team. So I'm glad they had that response. Yeah, and thank you for your personal leadership and pushing the project forward.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, great.
It was a long process, but definitely worth it. And now they understand what it means.
Yeah. All right, great job. If any other questions come up, we can circle back to the end to ask Laura. So thanks again, Laura. We'll transition now to Nicole sharing about ABB's process, which as a global company looks a little different. So Nicole, I think you have control of the screen there, so feel free.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I am Nicole Burney, the HSC manager. Jesse, you keep slipping my slides.
Oh, I just closed the chat.
No, I wanted to show, because I like the little, the picture. We don't make these here anymore, but those are EV chargers for electric vehicles. And we used to make them in Wisconsin, but now those got relocated to Phoenix, Arizona. So I do think that that's a pretty cool picture. But ABB is much larger than Inpro. So we operate out of 93 countries. We have 145,000 employees. So much larger. I am based in New Berlin, Wisconsin. We have 2 offices in Wisconsin, one in New Berlin and one in Wauwatosa. So there's about 600 employees that work out of those 2 locations that I help support. So I was just a very small piece of this whole big puzzle where Laura kind of oversaw the whole part of it. I just took a portion of it, but I am going to explain kind of the whole thing. Like Laura said, I just wasn't directly involved in some of the higher level decision-making things because this was really driven at a global level. So again, with ABB, I mentioned the EV chargers, but what we make here in Wisconsin are electrical drives. Some of our competitors are Rockwell and Eaton, and a drive powers a motor, and it's all about sustainability. We sell motors, or we sell drives to people so that we can lower the amount of energy that they're using. It helps them to maintain their equipment better, et cetera, et cetera. So our product is really, embedded in the whole, future of sustainability. So we went through a stakeholder engagement process like in 2013, and that was before I became a member of ABB, and that was to build the goals that would expire in 2020. So this process we started in 2019, and again, it was just a piece of building the 2030 sustainability initiatives goals. So you can see some of the other things, right, that we wanted to look at. So we have the stakeholder process at the top of this wheel, but we also are looking at what are our risks, what are some other people's best practices, what are our business inputs, and those sort of things. So this is just a small piece of how we wanted to build that 2030 sustainability strategy. I do like this visual because it kind of shows all of the inputs that go into this process, how it funnels down, and then how it gets pushed back out across the business. So, we do an employee engagement survey. That is kind of separate from what I'm talking about today. I know Laura had sent hers to her employees, but what I'm more talking about today is going to be the stuff that we did external. We do have, though, our internal employee engagement survey that gets done every year to every 2 years and is pushed through like the HR piece. I mean, that obviously contributes to this, but is a little bit separate than from what I ran. Then we have our external, which I'll talk about today, and then just other, business impacts. So we take all of those things, compile all the important things together, prioritize them, put them in the matrix, and then push them back out again so that they are, measurable goals that we can put forth across the organization. And then again, similar to what Laura did, we put it on a matrix, right? So we have the x-axis is what's the impact on our business, and then the y-axis, what's the influence on the stakeholders. So, are they going to buy our product if we do these things? Is this important for them? Is this a make or break that they want to do business with ABB? Or if we do this, does it make us a more attractive employer? And that sort of thing. So that's how we measured on our materiality matrix. I know this is really difficult to see, so I'm just going to kind of highlight, but we did ours in a interview format. So I believe in 2013, that engagement survey or that stakeholder assessment was more like Laura's, where it was more of a survey based, but this was actually individual speaking interviews, which was pretty cool actually. How they came up with the questions was there was an external consultant service that was hired, and they are focused in how to do these kind of corporate type assessments. So they helped develop the questions, and they also compiled the data. So a little bit easier again than what Laura had to kind of fish through is that we used some external experts to help us with that. But anyway, so they drafted those questions and they were vetted by leadership and agreed upon. And really the form was more used as a guide. I talk about this in another slide, but we utilized people to do the interviews that already had a relationship with whomever they were interviewing. So for example, I had to interview Jessie. And we already had a relationship, right? We knew each other. She knew that ABB was a member of the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I also had to do the sewer district because we have a water permit, but I already knew the leader there at the sewer district because he comes and inspects me once a year. So it wasn't so much strangers partnering up with strangers. If somebody was interviewing a customer, it was the sales rep that handles that customer. It wasn't me interviewing the customer. It was the person that actually does work with that customer. So we utilize this more as a guideline to help kind of frame the discussion. So a couple of questions, that we did ask was, what matters most to you with your relationship to ABB? Why does that topic matter to you? If we change it, how does that change your view of ABB? What would make you happy that we did? What other projects did we discuss? And the agreed next steps. And I really liked the agreed next steps because it made the interview really action-based. It wasn't just like, oh, what do you want us to do? Okay, see you later. It was, okay, what are we going to work on together then to meet your needs? And that was pretty cool. I have some, I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So again, the stakeholder engagement, who did we interview? It was really everybody. And we came up with a giant list of names and whittled it down. So not necessarily every stakeholder that was identified was interviewed. We kind of did the stakeholder dump and looked at them based on risk, right? Like who would have the most impact on our business or on our community and things like that. Let's target those people. So I only had to do, I think I did 3 or 4 interviews out of the 25 stakeholders I identified. So each group didn't have to do every single one. We kind of did that based on risk. But anyway, we looked at customers, suppliers, investors, the community, all sorts of people. I also interviewed the DNR. That was one. I think We Energies as well. And we incorporated everybody that was involved with those stakeholders. So myself as HSE, but also, supply chain, they would do the interviews for our suppliers. The sales team did the interviews for our customers. Engineering might have done that might have been some of our suppliers as well. So we really spread the actions across the organization, and it didn't just fall with one group. And actually, I kind of talked about that. So we did do interview training. So there was training ahead of time for how we were to conduct the interview and how really just more of if somebody said something, how would we get more information out of that? Really just how to do that discussion and then how the conversation might flow. And then we had to take all of that information and put it into Excel. So as Laura said, there's a lot of Excel happening in this process, good or bad. That's what we use. So there was a lot of data dumping into this SharePoint site with Excel. So that data dump did go to the external consultants to kind of wade through, and based on kind of like keywords and trends, because like we didn't use SurveyMonkey where you ranked things. This was all just data input, word input. So it's really looking at what are some keywords, what are some trends that we're seeing over and over and over again. I don't know what tools they use. I'm hoping they used a tool because that sounds really time consuming, but 18 topics were identified. So, you can see some of these here: product quality, employee learning and engagement and development, ethics and integrity, human rights, business resilience. So a lot of different topics were identified, and oops, I skipped too far ahead. And then those were ranked on that matrix. So again, very similar to what Laura did. So I just picked the top 3 to kind of expand upon for you all. So we didn't go through all of these, but the 3 most important ones came out were our product, solutions, and services. And that was really coming from our customers, right? So we are providing a piece of equipment that helps improve their operations, right? So it's supposed to make their equipment run more efficient. It's supposed to use less energy, so it should reduce their energy bills. It should reduce the amount of maintenance on the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. They want us to continue to get better, right? So they want us to be, designing the latest and greatest product, or, not only just saying, here's your drive, but what else can I do with this drive? How can I connect it now to my phone and have it be Bluetooth? Or, what is the total solution and total package that you can provide for me? So I thought that was pretty cool. And also we do partner with renewables. We had a group that would work with solar power and things like that. So it's, again, how are we using our product to contribute to the greater good? Energy efficiency and climate change. So what are we doing at our own factories? Are we using our own products? Are we using renewable energies? And then integrity. And I really related this. ABB has a code of conduct, not only for our employees, but also for like our suppliers. So how are we making sure that people are following that across the value chain? So those were the top 3. I mean, there were other ones on here, right, about developing our people, health and safety, human rights, and those sorts of things. So the outcomes, though, of those top 3 that I just mentioned were actions. So we did develop that 2030 sustainability strategy, and those 3 key areas are all mentioned now in that strategy. And this is public too, so we can always share the link, or you can search it too. If you just Google ABB Sustainability Strategy 2030, it is public information and you can see this as well. But when we talk about what we're going to do, then if our customers want us to develop the latest and greatest products and help them with their solutions, we're going to commit to that. So ABB's commitment is to reduce annual CO2 emissions by 100 megatons. For energy efficiency and climate change, we want to do carbon neutrality across our operations. We want to do zero waste to landfills. From an integrity standpoint, we really focus on health and safety and zero harm for all of our people and for our contractors. So we are measuring lost time injuries and a reduction in lost time injuries. So these are really, really high level goals. But then these trickle down to each of our divisions, and then each division has to develop more specific goals. So for example, for the energy efficiency and climate change, my local organization, we just replaced all of our production lighting with LED. So that was one piece for us, that how we're going to help have a more sustainable overall operation. We are also investigating going landfill free. So like I said, it kind of trickles down into the business. in another one too, and it's not so much related to these three, but when I left, I'll just give you specifically my interviews, right? So with the sewer district, their action was, can you reduce the amount of zinc you're putting in your water? So we are investigating a way to collect and recycle the water, and working with the pH of it to reduce the amount of zinc that we have. I interviewed Jessie, and from that, when I talked to her about what she would like to see from ABB, she said, I'd like to see you guys get more involved in the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council, because again, like, our products are promoting sustainability. And so here I am. And I presented at the annual conference as well. And it's helped me, like, really, like, doing these presentations has helped me, like, just feel more connected with the organization. So I think that was a positive outcome of the interviews that we had. And it's helped me to be able to kind of share that connection across my organization as well. Like, I'm always sharing this stuff now out on LinkedIn and in our internal communications. And so I know that that's a minor thing. It's not really hitting the globe, but it's, those small little impacts that make a difference, not only with you individually, but like across your organization. So that was a bonus for me. And on the lessons learned, I skipped too far. On the lessons learned, and I reached out to the global team on this one. They said that they wish they used a tool. So rather than just dumping everything in Excel, they wish they used some sort of a better measuring tool, because as you can see, there was a lot of responses. So there were 40,000 comments, 400 hours of interviews. That's just a lot to kind of weed through. So if we were to have done it different, that's how we would have done it. Personally, for me, and this is similar to what Laura said too, I would have liked to have seen more communication about this process in advance, and why we were doing it. So me as an interviewer, it's like, I just got an invite to go to an interview training. Okay, I go to the training, and then they say, oh, now you have to interview all these people. And I was like, what? Where is this coming from? I don't understand this. I did not plan for this year. It was just like the heads up wasn't there. So if I were to do this again, or if I were to plan this, I would start talking about it early and often, and make sure I'm letting those people that are going to be involved in the process know early and often that it's coming, so that it can be part of the strategic plan, not only of the global business, but of the local organizations as well. And we can really reserve that time for it. And honestly, when I was doing it, I didn't necessarily see the importance of it. Now, when I look at this, and as I'm, presenting to you, and I see, oh, we took these responses and we made these goals, and now these goals are trickling down to the local organizations, I totally see the benefit. I'm totally on board. But I will admit to you, at the time, I was not on board. I did it because I had to do it. So, getting that awareness out, getting that desire out, it's all that, change management process when you're introducing something completely new to your organization, especially to the people that are going to be actively involved in it. That's it.
Awesome. I think you did such a great job at sharing how this happened succinctly at a global scale, right down to your local responsibility in parts of it. So, and then just connecting it back to the why, right? Like, we all kind of need to remember that we don't want to add extra work to add extra work, but that this is actually really important information in informing your both future strategy and your overall company's work plan and employees' work plans and your goals. So I think you really reiterated those messages. So Jenna did ask if you know who the firm that ABB hired was, and if you would hire them again, so to speak. Not sure if you have that information directly.
I don't have that information. That's a really good question though, and I can definitely follow up, and I can send that information to you, Jessie.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I can follow up with you, Jenna, then, and pass that on as well. Are there any other questions? I think, let me see here. I did just want to I know this process can be large and overwhelming. I think we have a mix of maybe some smaller and larger organizations on the phone. So, please share maybe where you're at. I did want to offer SASB as a resource. Laura mentioned that she used this mapping in her initial sort of process and sort of winnowing down what those elements and questions were. And she used the Green Masters and she used GRI. So I just want you all to know that this is a great resource out there. What SASB has done is take information across industries and interview essentially their global stakeholder group and sort of help prioritize what generally is material to that industry. So if you go to their website, it's the SASB Materiality, you can go and find your sector and kind of see what their most material issues are. And it's a good starting point as a tool. So I wanted to make sure you all knew that. That's really all we had for you today. So I would love to open it up for any discussion or questions or just comments. We do have about 7 minutes left. So please feel free to share your thoughts or maybe where you're at in this process.
There is one question that Mark just had popped up in the chat box about a key hope or aspiration do you have for sustainable practice in our company? So for me, because Jesse had mentioned I was the facilities manager as well, so I used to manage the building. I like ABB for ABB. So we have a lot of divisions, and if any of you work for a large corporation, the divisions are almost like separate entities, so they don't always overlap and work together. So for me, it's like I would like to see more ABB products here in my factory operating all of my building systems. So we already have that with our HVAC system. So our HVAC system has a lot of our drives that we make here in the building operating that system. But our lighting, for example, you just would open up the breaker box and flip off these 480 volt breakers. Not safe, also not efficient. So we are working on getting industrial, like in our lighting controls up and running. And that is something that I can't remember what group of ABB does it, but they have a building management system. So that's for me, I would like to see more of our products. I would like to see, EV chargers and things outside and out front to promote that. And we don't have that here, at least at this building. In other buildings across the United States, we do, but not here at this one.
And I think my answer to that question would be, I would really like to see the results being used for our yearly like goals and strategies. Like in our EMS team, to be able to like look at the matrix when we're creating our goals and think about what is actually material to our stakeholders in creating those goals. And I mean, the ideal hope would be to bring that up to senior managers for their yearly strategy meetings. So they're actually looking at that when they're creating their overall strategy and incorporating it into a sustainability plan at some point. I think that would be the hope for me.
Great, good question, Mac. Thank you. There's another question for both of you here that now that priorities have been identified, what process do you have in place to monitor the material issues? We'll start with that one.
Yeah, that's a good, I'll start with that one. Like I mentioned, we're using this for our reporting. And so we came up with our core strategy group. Our steering committee is meeting again this year to talk about the process and talk about how to do it better next time. And so we realized that we're not actually like doing much with the results. And so we're using our annual sustainability report as kind of a report on our progress. And so once that is actually finalized with marketing, in the next couple of months, we're going to use that to create a 3-pager brochure on, okay, you guys answered this laborious questionnaire last year. Here is what we've done with it, and here are the updates and results coming forward. So we're using our annual report right now to kind of measure and monitor.
Yeah, I agree with that. Similar answer. The other thing for us, like specifically, I'm just looking at the carbon neutrality and the zero waste. So we have a global tool that on a quarterly basis, all of the locations across the globe are putting in how much energy they're using. Is the energy green or is it not? How much waste are they developing, whether it's recycled or landfilled, et cetera. So we have these tools that can then spit out a report and we can measure ourselves year over year. And then
Great. So Nathan is asking, I've heard that materiality isn't really strategy, it's just to decide what to include in your report. I think this is the opinion, or this opinion is because GRI is where we see the definitions and requirements for the materiality process. He's asking if that's right. And then, oh, it's good to hear that you found this helpful in measure, monitor, engage. Okay, so it was more of a comment than necessarily a question, but speaking to the point, and if you have any comments on this, that, yeah, often it's said that this is process is to really inform reporting, but really you're taking it, or at least ABB has definitely taken it to that level of informing reporting, but also informing your overall strategy.
yeah.
And it sounds like Inpro, you might be on your way to that.
Yeah, it's developing action based on the results.
Mm-hmm.
There was another question in Roxanne's though. There
Did I
was two
miss that?
questions.
So it says, also, both of you mentioned how laborious this process was. Do you think companies will invest more in technology to support your work?
I guess I'm wondering, and I don't know if Roxanne, if you want to just pop back on. Are you asking about like technology to be able to do the assessment more effectively?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, Nicole. And I apologize, I'm not on video. I'm sort of in a public space, but yeah, the question around technology is just, a matter of, I think you could take it generally. I think we're living in a more volatile world. And so having access to real-time data, and I think you both talked about credibility and sort of being able to validate what you think. I'm just curious if you think that's sort of like an enterprise-wide consideration, or if there's any other emphasis for, sustainability and ESG and how those factors are embedded across the organization. So precisely, yeah, I mean, do you think now that, going through this process, do you think there will be, and with sort of the changing external landscape, do you think there will be more focus on the role that technology can play?
I do. And I think that starts with kind of what I had said at the end was that why, right? And if you want to do this right, or I'm trying to phrase this properly. When you present the business case to somebody that this is what I want to do, I want to interview all of these stakeholders, this is what I need to do it, it's probably easy to say, I don't want to pay $10,000 for this system. What are we really going to get out of it? So I guess it's really having that why behind it so that when you pitch it to the business, they can say, oh yeah, okay, I see where we can get a lot of value out of it, and then investing in the tool.
And I'll also add to that kind of a different framing of your question, Roxanne, where like the technology to make this easier. There is a company called Datamaran that I had conversations with to understand how to do this. And so they actually help create materiality assessments, and they have the tool to prioritize things, and they have the tool to like distribute surveys and bring them back. But what they specialize in also is having another category of news. And so they are able to add like current events and news into your materiality assessment to make sure that you are staying current and you are understanding what, not just your direct stakeholders, but kind of the world in general is thinking right now. And I think there are like filters that you can put on that or something, but it was really interesting to see how they are trying to make this a little bit more up to date.
Awesome. Great questions. I appreciate both of you so much for being here to share your stories with us. I think this was really informative. So we are at our time here. If anyone has any additional thoughts or questions, please feel free to follow up with me via email We will make the recording available, so you'll have access to that if needed. And we hope that you will join us in our next month's webinar, which will be about how to structure your sustainability program and how to use the Green Masters program for your structure. So again, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.